Okay.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Okay, so again, thank you all so much for being here today for Afghan Community Impact Incubator Round 2 virtual summit event. So this is the very first time we are having a summit. So we obviously want to start off with the land acknowledgement. We do want to emphasize that AYEDI operates on the indigenous lands of the Huron-Wendat, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee peoples, and the Mississaugas of the Credit River. We acknowledge that we have the privilege to function on this land because of the ongoing processes of colonialism, and we encourage each and every one of you to confront your own position on these lands and reflect on how we came to be here today. I know especially as Afghans and with everything going on, this is especially important in recognizing our privilege in being on these lands. Okay, next slide.
Thank you, Banin. Before we get into our formal introduction, we do want to give a huge shout out to Taking It Global and Rising Youth. They are who we are partnered with for the Afghan Community Impact Incubator, and we're so excited to be launching it for a second time.
Thank you.
We will move on to, yeah, go ahead.
Just also want to quickly mention some housekeeping rules before Yasna gets into the agenda. So please kindly keep your microphones on mute during the session, unless there's discussion going on and the speakers want you to engage, then definitely feel free to unmute or use the raise hand feature, which you can see if you click on reactions, raise hand, okay? You can also type in the chat box if you have any questions throughout. We do prefer cameras on just because we don't get a lot of opportunities to be with the Afghan community together. So we would definitely love to see your faces, but again, no pressure on that. And yeah, just so you also know, in each session, towards the end of it, we designated 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A period. So you will definitely get a chance to interact with all of the speakers and get your questions answered through that as well. So we will definitely be letting everyone have the opportunity to get any questions answered. And as well, just so you know, Yasna and I are here throughout the entire process. So you can always shoot us a message, email, or anything if you miss anything. So awesome. Please go ahead with the agenda, Yasna.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Banin. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Afghan Youth Engagement and Development Initiative's AYEDI's Afghan Community Impact Incubator Round 2 Summit. We're so excited to have you all here today and to be sharing this space with you. Before we get into it, I want to introduce myself. My name is Yasna, and I am one of AYEDI's new program directors.
And I am Banin, and I'm also program director with Yasna.
We're so excited to have ACII participants, AYEDI team members, and special guest speakers and subject matter experts here with us today, which we will get into a little bit. Before we get into all of that, we want to cover our agenda for today. So the first kind of little bit of it will be workshop 1, led by Banin and myself, and that will be on all things rising youth, grant application wise, AC structure, project ideation, implementation, all that good stuff, followed by workshop 2, which will be all about leadership and how to lead a successful team, followed by our networking session and lunch. After that, we will be doing workshop 3, which will be covered by a third guest speaker, and that will be in one of our 2 breakout rooms today, which you guys have all chosen in terms of what workshop you'd like to attend. And so workshop 3 will cover project continuation strategies, and workshop 4 will cover community outreach and best practices, followed by our conclusion and closing remarks.
And yeah, just as Yasna mentioned, everyone had the option to choose between workshop 3 and 4. So they're both amazing guest speakers. I know that everyone will benefit from all of the content. So we are releasing the recording of the workshop that you didn't attend. So don't worry about that. It just would have been a super long day if we had all of these workshops that you had to attend. Awesome. So thanks for going over that, Yasna. So of course, before we actually begin the session, we don't want to go ahead without mentioning and talking and acknowledging the crisis, the humanitarian crisis that's happening in Afghanistan and the situation. We know that it's difficult for a lot of people to be here today. So we genuinely and sincerely recognize that you're taking a very important time out of your day to be here, to engage with us. But we are really proud of everyone to be here and to step up for the community, because just you being here is also doing a lot and creating a lot of impact. So thank you for that. I will link one of the events that are going on today, Dil Badil. It will be a space for Afghans to join together in expressing their grief, and it's a safe space. And as well, there are many other events. I know all over social media, AYEDI will be posting some of them as well. So definitely keep in tune with that, and just stick together with the Afghan community. I know it's definitely a difficult time. So yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Banin.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So with that being said, we are very excited to once again announce that we are hosting the first ever Afghan Community Impact Incubator Summit for ACII participants. And this will honestly, it's going to further increase our reach and our positive impact on our Afghan community, and just continuing to fill that gap. And we're so excited to offer you 4 workshops today, 4 very valuable workshops today that will help each and every one of you develop and launch your impactful projects and learn lots of new important skills along the way. Our 4 guest speakers and subject matter experts today are Christina Mouet, Shireen Salti, Jay Baker, and Yasmin Rajabi. And you will all meet them at some point today. So very exciting.
And just to touch on that too, the aim of the summit today is to reduce the barriers in developing and implementing innovative ideas. So yeah, you will hear from past AC participants as well. I know a lot of them have signed up again, which is fantastic, including myself. I was an AC participant. And we also recognize that the Afghan community is very underserved and under-resourced. So the point of this entire program is to make it as easy as possible, as streamlined as possible, and to provide Afghan youth who typically don't have these opportunities to get the opportunity to be leaders in their communities. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so we did cover a few housekeeping notes earlier in terms of cameras on, raising your hands, question periods, things like that. We once again do want to emphasize that the workshops will be recorded. However, the speakers will be spotlighted and no participants will be recorded. And then everyone will receive the recording from each workshop today. One last little note, if you could add your project's name and your name description, just like Banin and I have AYEDI beside us. If you could add your project name, that would be awesome in order for us to easily identify your projects during our summit today.
Yeah, beautiful. So I will now be launching our pre-session poll. So it's just a quick poll that you can do. And we just want to gather and kind of gauge what everyone's idea and understanding is around the different topics that we're going over today. So if you can just quickly fill that out. waiting on a few more, and then you can go ahead. Okay, perfect. Thank you all for filling that out. Yeah, and now we can get started with our very first workshop of the day. You can just have the next slide.
Sorry, I actually have to mention about the Uber Eats codes. Hello, everyone. It's Khaliq, Executive Director of AYEDI. I'm so proud of Yasna and Banin for putting this summit together, and they'll definitely be playing a big role in what's coming up today. If you have signed up, you will be getting your Uber Eats code at 12:30 p.m. in your email. If you have not signed up, but you're still here, I have noted that, and you will also be getting your email. And that's for the lunch period, which I believe, Yasna and Banin, correct me, is 2:15 to 2:30, 2:45.
Yes, later in the day, around 1:15.
Yeah, 2:15 to 2:45. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Right.
2:15.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So we encourage you to use that to buy lunch during that time. And Banin and Yasna also, you have the opportunity to kind of network possibly with other people during that lunch hour if you wish. So we encourage you. We have a bunch of community leaders and change makers here with great ideas. Some of your ideas overlap, some are different, but it's still cool. So definitely take advantage of being here and connecting with other people.
Beautiful. Thanks, yes, Khalda, for that.
Perfect.
Okay. So to get started, so of course, as you've heard, this is a partnership between the AYEDI organization and Rising Youth. So AYEDI is the Afghan Youth Engagement and Development Initiative. That's us. And then Rising Youth is a wonderful organization that actually funds all of the youth and gives them the grant. So we partner together to provide this opportunity for Afghan youth across Canada. So there will be financial support provided through Rising Youth. But this partnership is unique because it is meant to support specifically Afghan Canadian youth, okay? It aims to promote Afghan community engagement, wellness, pride, and much more. So just to keep in mind, this program is completely non-competitive. So as long as you sign up with us, participate in all of the required steps, and ensure that your project meets all of the eligibility criteria for community service, you will receive up to $1,500 in funding. So this just means like, okay, follow the steps. If Yasna and I are trying to help you and giving you suggestions, like that would be helpful for you. And we will basically ensure that you meet all of the eligibility criteria, okay? So yeah, thank you. Next slide. So the key requirements in order to be eligible. So it must be created and led by youth age 15 to 30. It has to be done through volunteer time. So you're not getting paid, your team members are not getting paid, and it must not be done on behalf of an organization other than a volunteer-led youth organization, okay? If you are part of an organization, it has to be a completely new program or event, and it's also part of a nonprofit, okay? So you can be associated with an organization, but it just can't be a continuation of something that already exists. Please do not purchase, not be simply a purchase. So there must be a service aspect associated for it. You can't just simply purchase a computer, right, for yourself. You can purchase items, care packages, things like that, PPE, COVID related, and distribute them to low-income populations, for example, but you can't just buy stuff. It's not meant to be a fundraiser, unfortunately, so you can't fundraise for Afghanistan for the crisis right now, for example. It can't be revenue generating, and it cannot simply be a donation, okay? So an important point to note right now is that you must report everything within 30 days, including providing relevant photos and receipts. So everything you purchase with that money that will be e-transferred to you, you have to provide proof of where it went towards, receipts, invoices, honorariums, etc. Yeah, and then full criteria is definitely available on the Rising Youth website, as well as our own AYEDI Afghan Incubator website. And the next slide. So of course, important dates to keep in mind when applying. So our recommended deadline for the Afghan Community Impact Incubator is September 30th. So end of September, you should have your project objectives, your budget breakdown, project description ready to go and to be submitted, just so you can get the full amount that you're applying for, right? We will try to ensure that everyone gets a full 1,500. But again, budget is being distributed on a rolling basis. So the earlier you apply, the more chances you get of getting the full amount. So October 31st is the hard deadline in which youth will be considered for the full grant amount that they apply for. Again, any submissions after the date are subject to being offered a smaller grant amount, a change in their timeline, or it can possibly be declined. So no later than October 31st is recommended. So all of the projects must be completed by January 31st, right? That's the very hard deadline for that. And then March 1st, 2022 is the reporting deadline for all grantees, okay? But again, this is only if, for example, you start your project in January, then March 1st is your deadline. If you, for example, start in November, then you have an earlier deadline. So whenever you end your project, so if you end your project in December 31st, then 30 days after that, you must report everything. So all receipts, your impact, et cetera. And there's a report that we will go through later on. And one of our guest speakers will speak on that. Yeah. Next slide, please. So let's jump into ideation. So of course, there's a lot of different things to keep in mind, especially if you are a grassroots, young person who has never delivered a project or implemented one. These are some of the questions that you can think about, okay? So what would it take to make this happen, right? So I wish we had this over here, or I saw this in another community and loved it, or something happened in a book or in the news on social media, and it would be cool if it were here too. Or if you're thinking like, oh, someone should start this over here, right? Or one of my friends was talking about this. Now is the time to actually implement these ideas, things that you were passionate about or things you thought about before, because you will have the resources, you will have support from people, and you will have this amazing experience to finally start like a grant application that you may have not had the opportunity to do before. And then you should also start thinking about who is going to be served by these ideas, right? So what does the impact look like? Who participates in this? Who would participate if they could, right? Who's often not included in these ideas when these projects are delivered, right? So think about rural communities, think about newcomers, refugees who don't have the same language access that we do. And then what are the barriers that might be there to access? So these are important questions to keep in mind and just brainstorm while you're thinking about your project. And then the next slide, please. So again, problem solving and problem framing is really important. So these are additional questions that you can keep in mind and work through. So what are the idea prompts that come to mind, right? What drives our work? So some of the things you can start thinking about is this something that you can achieve personally, right? On a personal level? Do you know what making it happen would require? And where can you look to for support, right? Who do I need? What social capital do I need in order to make this project happen? And then can we define a specific issue or problem in those prompts, right? So when writing a grant application, it's always important for whatever grant application is, you are addressing a specific problem that you notice, right? And then your project is going to be addressing that, going to fill in those gaps and those voids in the community. So can you name or describe the specific issue or the problem? Does your project do that, right? Does it only exist in a certain context, or is it more universal? And where does this issue or problem stem from, right? Are there systems that create it? Are there individual actions? Is it programs and policies? And also, if there's more than one answer to this question, how do they relate to each other, right? So start thinking of the problems as well. So again, this can start to get complicated and overwhelming, and it doesn't have to be too complicated. We just really want you to start thinking about what the problem is, where it comes from, and how am I, with my project, going to address it in whatever, a little or big way, right? In any way possible. Next slide, please. And then again, so the strategic planning presentation will go over this more in depth, but you can start thinking about it. Like, what is my mandate or vision? Do I know what a mandate or vision even means? So what do I want with my project? What are my resources? How can we make it happen? And what are my operations? So what are the actual steps to take to make this happen, right? How are we going to do it? So this is what you should think about when starting to build your ideas. So next slide, please. Yeah, so this is a super helpful project canvas that ID used last year. And as a participant, I used it and it helped me a lot. So have you heard of a project canvas before? You can type in the chat box or just say yes or no. But if you haven't, this is one of the project planning tools that Rising Youth has in their action guide that you can definitely find online. So it's a great way to get your ideas on paper and to start to fit the puzzle together. So I really like it because you not only have your project description, you have your timeline, super rough, right? This is super rough. Your location, is it in a specific location? Is it virtual? Your needs or resources, again, super rough. And then also your beneficiary. So who is benefiting from this? University students, high school students, Afghan seniors, newcomers, who is the project actually impacting. So we'll just go over this actually. Project description here is students sharing skills with others, okay? This is super rough, super basic, but this is where we want you to start, right? We don't want you to start off with a super detailed project that will, get you caught up in the details and not actually think about it from a bigger picture. Start super rough. What do you want to do? Build each other up, fix it, skill share, or fix it fair, sorry. So different things. And then your timeline. So I want to do it in winter. So February to April. Location here is Halifax. And then your needs or resources. This is facilitators, space, volunteers, recruitment, partners and tools, youth groups, other organizations. So you have to, in some cases, think about outreach strategies too, which we'll go over today. And then again, beneficiaries, it's specifically they're targeting students and high school students, university and high school. And then this is fun for me. So this was my very first project description for Afghan Rising magazine. So what I submitted. And of course, it didn't look like this from the very beginning. Khalida, the executive director, and Margila, the vice president, they were the lead on this last year and they helped a lot. So what we did was we had our super rough project idea with all of this after the training. And then we sent it to Khalida and Margila, and then they looked over it. And if there were any issues, red flags or anything, they would let us know and then send it back to us. And then we would kind of workshop that, finalize it and send it back to them for the green light. So this is the same thing that we're going to do this year. So we will definitely look through all the projects if you want us to look through it. And we will give you the green light if we think it meets all eligibility criteria to ensure that you get the grant, right? Again, we're not writing your projects for you. We're not writing the descriptions for you. So this is all you, it's coming from your mind. But we will definitely flag things to you because we have experience with it and we know the criteria, right? Yes, Yasna, Banin and Yasna and I have your backs. So again, project description. So we kind of use the canvas, right? Sentence one, problem statement. Of course, always start off with your problem. What is the gap? Sentence two is who, what, where, when. Include your goals, your objectives, your purpose. And then sentence four, what will the funds actually be used for, right? So always try to keep it short and sweet, but of course, detail is helpful. So what we said was that there's no mainstream platform right now for Afghan Canadians to address various issues that the community faces with regards to mental health, racism, gender and sexuality, identity, barriers for newcomers and Afghan refugees, and more. Our idea is to spearhead an Afghan Canadian online magazine that will connect Afghan Canadians, promote well-being, and feature Afghan Canadian voices on important topics that have not had a platform before. So this magazine will primarily target Afghan youth and adults living in the diaspora, including newcomer and refugee Afghans. Our aim is to feature Afghan Canadian art, opinion pieces, trailblazers, and Afghan-led initiatives and resources. The funds will be used for marketing and promotion, hosting a magazine launch event, honoraria for guest speakers, an open call for magazine submissions, and website subscription for publishing our very first issue. Our marketing, promotion, and website setup will begin in late December, and the virtual launch event and first issue release will take place in mid-February. So again, this was our kind of rough idea. We ended up kind of pushing the dates, for example. So things change as we go along, but the most important thing is just to notify Yasna and myself if things do change, if your idea changes, if your budget changes, just so we know that you're still keeping on track. And as you can see here, we didn't just have a magazine, so it wasn't just an online component. We had an engagement piece as well, like a virtual launch event. And then the wonderful poet, spoken word artist, Frishta Bastan, who's also part of the ID team, she was a guest speaker at our virtual launch event. So we engaged the community. We had artists come in. We had lots of submissions for the magazine. So it was definitely a variety of different things that occurred. But as well, my favorite part was the fact that we have like a website now that's sustainable, right? So we'll go over the budget in a moment as well, but we do want to emphasize projects to be sustainable, right? We want you to scale up and continue and not just have like a one-time thing. But again, if you do have a one-time thing for the context of like, for example, COVID right now, you want to do something, that's also fine, right? But do know that we want to help you keep your project sustainable. The next slide, please. Perfect. And then of course, a shout out to all of the amazing projects from last year. I know a lot of them are here today to receive grant funding for a new idea. So just to clarify that a bit as well, I know we told everyone already, but those who are applying again, your project lead does have to be different on paper. They won't accept the same person again. And your project idea, so you can still be part of the same group. So for example, Afghan Rising has applied again, but we have a completely different idea this time, okay? So you have to change your idea for your event or for your project, even though you can still apply as part of the same group, okay? Yeah, so shout out to ACII Round 1. We had an Afghan Youth Book Club. We had a magazine. We had a summit event shedding light on the situation of the Hazaras. We had Afghan sews, which was traditional Afghan needlework, and they did this virtually, and everyone got like embroidery sets and everything. There was like an Afghan senior interview kind of video showcase. There was Journey to Healing, so talking about mental health. There was the Muslim International Film Festival. They hosted workshops for youth, like acting classes, which is like specifically for Afghans, led by an Afghan actor, and that was fantastic. Skills for Afghanistan, Supportistan. Afghan Collective led a financial literacy series. Ahead and School Bag Project, they distributed care packages and school kind of academic care packages as well, and PPE, different things like that. So there was a lot of different things that happen, and also can't forget to give a shout out to Your Yoga Journey, which was a wonderful thing as well, that had Farsi classes for Afghan moms, which is like, wow, you know, that's a great opportunity for Afghan adults too, especially with regards to mental health and opening up that conversation. So really great. So all of these project ideas are online as well. You can take a look at all of them in their description. So if you need inspiration, if you need to know like, okay, this was eligible and my idea is similar, so that will be good. And then, yeah, so a lot of project ideas, you can definitely take a look at them online on the ID website. And then the next one, I believe, Yasna, you can take it away, please.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Banin. That was amazing. So following through, now we're going to be talking a little bit about budget. So we're going to get into exactly how you can mold your $1,500 budget in order to best meet your project's needs and goals. So next slide, please. So as most of you may know already, there are 3 levels of grants that you can apply to. There's the $250 grant, $750 grant, and then the $1,500 grant. However, we strongly encourage you to apply for the $1,500 grant. We definitely want you to have lots of access to the most resources, lots of access to resources that you want to offer on behalf of your project to your participants. And we also will definitely touch on this and its significance as we dive deeper into project mandates, operations, and resources in a few different slides. Next slide, please. Awesome. So in terms of eligible expenses, it's definitely important that you pay attention to these requirements. We'll go over eligible expenses and then ineligible expenses. So I don't want to read the entire list out here, but you can take a look, and I think everyone kind of understands exactly what is eligible: honoraria, food, room booking, space rental, transportation, webinar platform subscriptions. That's especially applicable during COVID-19 times. Website startup costs, marketing, supplies, equipment, and other. And if you kind of are on the fence about whether something is eligible or not, you can definitely contact Banin and I, and we will definitely help you out with that. In terms of ineligible expenses, your project cannot be a fundraiser or an activity. Next slide, sorry, thank you. Your project should not be a fundraiser or an activity that primarily uses the grant funds to raise funds for a charity or a cause. It can be a continuation of an existing program or initiative. You can't charge event entrance fees as per Rising Youth rules. And it must be done on behalf of or for an organization other than a volunteer-led youth organization or club. It must be done on behalf of an organization that is volunteer-led, such as AYEDI. Moving on, we will touch on some eligible expenses, and Banin will get into kind of a real life application of her process with budgeting for Afghan Rising magazine.
Yeah, so Yasna wonderfully went over the eligible and ineligible expenses, and that is going to be available for everyone to read through specifically on each point. But just to quickly go over, if you do purchase equipment, for example, expensive camera or a laptop or anything like that, or like a projector to do like a movie night, for example, you can definitely purchase those things, but you must donate them after your project is complete. So no, donate them to a nonprofit or charitable organization, okay? You cannot keep them, and we need proof that you donated them. And so again, we are encouraging everyone to join or apply for the 1,500 grant. But for example, if you do find yourself wanting to apply for the 251 or the 751, then you have to just keep in mind that the maximum honoraria for each is different. So maximum honoraria for the 250 grant is 250. For the 750 grant is 450 per speaker. And then for the 1,500 grant is 450 for each speaker, okay? And then the maximum amount that can be spent on equipment is again 250, then 750, and then 750, and that must be donated. And then the the final thing on the budget. So I'll just do a walkthrough of the Afghan Rising magazine budget on the next slide. Sorry, if you can go back, perfect. So the wonderful thing about the ACII program is that we give a budget breakdown and examples. So this is what we were sent last year, okay? The left side, so it tells you expenses like space rental, food, supplies, and it tells you like, okay, the maximum for honoraria is $450, right? And then on the right side in the red font, that's what me and my team member filled out. So for space rental, that didn't apply to us because it was COVID pandemic and we didn't have to rent any space. So we just wrote virtual event. For food, we wrote, okay, $10 times 45 Starbucks gift cards for event attendees. And that's a total of $450 roughly. And then marketing and promotion. So we purchased our website through Squarespace. So we had a website subscription and a domain name. And that cost us around $200. We wanted to purchase a Canva Pro account. We purchased a Zoom Pro account as well. So again, this is like a yearly subscription or a 2-year website subscription that's supposed to keep it sustainable. And then Facebook and Instagram ads. So I believe we ended up having Instagram ads that were super successful. And again, so initially we wrote Facebook and Instagram. We just ended up going with Instagram. Our team didn't end up purchasing the Canva Pro, but we designated more money towards like our guest speakers, for example. So things can be moved around, but you do have to kind of message AYEDI and Rising Youth just to see if it's okay, right? You can't just drastically change your budget. But yeah, we definitely are flexible in terms of that if something comes up and you have a different idea. And then we initially said that for honoraria, we wanted to give our graphic designer $350 and then our guest speaker $100. So we did end up giving graphic designer and guest speaker honoraria, but it was like a different amount, right? In total, you see it ends up being $1,500. And we do emphasize that you must use all of your grant money to the dot. So I know for us, for example, for the honoraria, it was like I had to give 100 and something cents, and I'm like, you keep it because I don't want this in my bank account, right? You have to send all of the money. And for example, if there's like a few dollars left in your bank account and you don't know what to do with it, shoot Yasna and I an email. You can also talk to the Rising Youth team, but it's super important to make sure you spend all of the money, right? And if you do have trouble with it, definitely reach out to us. And yes, absolutely, Khalda's right. You will be provided a budget spreadsheet and a Word document. So we do give you the templates for everything. We're not going to let you just go through with it without any assistance. Yes, I'm good to go for the next slide, please.
Perfect. So we are just going to introduce Christina from Rising Youth now. She will be our guest speaker for the next little portion of our workshop. So we are very, very happy to have Christina Mouet from Rising Youth joining us as a guest speaker for a portion of our workshop right now. Christina came to Canada as a teenager, so she understands the firsthand experience of being a first-generation Canadian and navigating a new country as a young person. Christina has worked and volunteered with the public sector and several nonprofits and is passionate about supporting youth to take up leadership and make positive changes that they would like to see in their own communities. Previously, Christina worked on Taking It Global's Rwanda Hugukaka Decor project and is excited to rejoin Taking It Global's Rising Youth project as a partnership lead and data administrator to contribute to work that has a tangible impact on young people. Recently, Christina was part of the 2019 ACII Youth Policy Makers Hub. Christina loves traveling, loves a good adventure, loves watching sitcoms and comedies, and solving complex and simple problems, including playing online games. The floor is yours, Christina. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yasna, for that introduction. Let me know if you can't hear me.
You're good to go.
I'm good to go?
Yes.
You guys can hear? Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, it's good to see you all here. Yeah, thanks for putting this together, Yasna and Banin. It looks amazing. Such an amazing job you guys have done. I know you put a lot of work into just getting this together. It looks really good. And Khalida obviously and Mahila did this last year too. And I was also like a guest speaker as well. So it's great to see some of you on the call that I also recall, like Mariam, for instance. So yeah, so I'm glad to be here. And should I run my own slides or what do you guys think?
I know we will share them for you in just a second.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, thank you.
So hopefully all of you will get to apply for the grants again, or work with somebody else who you applied last year and just do a different project. That'll be really cool.
Yeah, super excited.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for sharing my screen. I know you guys already did an introduction on Rising Youth, like that the grants are funded by the Government of Canada and the Canada Service Corps. So I won't go into detail about that. I just move on to the next slide. So just want to talk about the partnership that we've had with AYEDI. So we've worked with AYEDI since last year, like August 2020 as a partner. But I believe actually Khalida applied for the grants like I think the year before that, if I'm not mistaken. So like there was always a relationship there between like AYEDI and Rising Youth as well. And we also work with 75 partners since 2019. Thanks for correcting me. Yeah. So it's been a while. It's been almost almost 2 years. So it's been really good. And Rising Youth has been around for 4 years, right? So that's like half of the time that we've been around. And so we work with over 75 partners across the country. And a lot of them work with different kinds of youth, diverse youth facing different barriers. We work with partners who serve Indigenous youth, visible minorities like yourselves, for instance, newcomers as well, refugees, also LGBTQ2+ youth, rural remote youth as well, Francophone youth who are also considered underrepresented. And so we work with really diverse groups as well, and also youth with disabilities. And so we're really excited to continue working with AYEDI this year as a formal partner. And so last year, some of you obviously applied for the grants. So we saw like a lot of applications from AYEDI. It was really impressive to see through the summit that was done or the workshop that was done. So in December last year, that there were 20 applications in in 3 weeks. So that was a quick turnaround. It was really impressive what the team was able to do. And also you guys also reported back on time, which was really impressive as well. So, amazing job. So on all fronts, everyone who was involved in either supporting the youth or the youth themselves who applied and really got their report saying we are appreciative of seeing you guys, getting back to us on your impact, because we really want to see how far the grants were able to take you and what you learned from them and, what you were able to make a difference as well. And also last year, also AYEDI was able to be part of the panel. We had an alumni celebration for Ontario, and we featured Khalida as a partner and Mariam as an alumni. And we also had other speakers like Shared Canada, for instance. And we also had Rexdale Youth Mentorship as well on that Ontario celebration for alumni. And I do believe AYEDI is well positioned to really support all of you in being able to apply for this grant successfully and do your projects because they wear 2 hats. They're both a partner and they're also an alumni, right? A lot of you are alumni already. So you're well positioned to really be able to support other youth. And so if you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to the AYEDI team because you're in good hands. You can move on to the next slide. Yes, this one I show you the grantee support hub, 3 different hubs. And one of them is grantee support hub, which is for youth who have applied recently and are still doing their projects and are trying to kind of get a few skills around how to do project management, right? So we have different resources there on how to successfully implement and run a project. And we also have the alumni hub, which you get to join after you're done with your project, which I think some of you are already on, and they also probably receive the alumni newsletter. And we also have the partner hub, which AYEDI also gets to see as a partner. And so there's 3 different hubs, and they all serve different purposes. And so specifically the grantee support hub is really created to really support the youth as they go through their projects if they need different resources to kind of access, so they can be able to complete their project successfully. So if you go to the next slide. So for instance, like with the planning resources, so if you want to for example, create a checklist, if you have an event coming up and you're not sure what things that you're going to need to kind of get it done and get it done well, you could use these 2 checklists here to be able to determine whether you've done everything that you need to do. So the first one, I believe, is for planning an event, and the second one is for planning a project. And so you can use either one of those. And I also encourage you to also use SMART goals as well, because it really helps you look at your projects, from, obviously with the grants that we're giving you, some micro grant, and you can make a small impact, but at the same time, you can also be making a bigger impact, and you're not seeing the bigger picture of it. And so with the SMART goals, it really allows you to break down your work, using these different goals. Like I use this actually in my own work as well, looking at how specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound your goals are. And it can really help you look at your projects in different ways and from different angles. And so I really encourage you all to use it, kind of like what Banin said as well. So they have a template. That's great. So you guys should also, access that as well. So move to the next slide. I'm not sure if some of you here have experience with budgeting, or if you've done that before, but we find this is one thing that sometimes you struggle with, especially like filling out the budget templates or filling out their budgets in a way that that they feel comfortable that they're whatever they're presenting is right. And so just you can go through this resource as well. And I'm sure Yasna and Banin also went through a very detailed budgeting aspect of it, so they can also support you if you need help with that, because that's why we see a lot of you struggle in terms of like submitting the applications. So make sure you're tracking your actual expenses and what you kind of applied for, and kind of make sure you're also keeping track of your receipts. So we noticed that a lot of you are not submitting the receipts, so please keep your receipts. Take a photo of them, because sometimes they're like, I don't know, sometimes they're rub off, or you can lose them. So just take photos of them on the go, so you can just upload them to the app if you choose to download that, or upload them to the report template once you're ready to kind of submit your report. So we go to the next slide. And so here there's some team building resources that you can also access as well. And I'm sure also like, the AYEDI team will be walking you through a very detailed, I think you have a guest speaker, if I'm not mistaken, who will kind of walk the team through, what it's like to, build a team, and how you should kind of like work within a team and things like that. But we also have these resources on like, what's your leadership style? Like if you want to figure out what kind of leader am I, or, you're trying to figure out which role best suits you. If you're part of a team and you're, struggling to see where that all fits in. So like you can use these resources to kind of also figure that out. So with the next slide. And we also have some outreach resources here as well. I know a lot of you here are very savvy, obviously, like when it comes to like social media and things like that. So if you need these resources, obviously they're here for you to access. But we have, additional resources that you can also tap into if you don't know how, for example, to put a Facebook ad together. Like we have a step-by-step guide of how to put a Facebook ad together. So if, for example, you have an event that's coming up and you want to put some money behind an ad with the grant funds, you could do that, right? And I will encourage you to do that if you want to maybe reach out to more youth, even further than Ontario, right? So put funds behind your ad. Put funds behind your event, and then you could probably have more people as well. And I think it's like $7 for Facebook, if I'm not mistaken, from the last time I checked, but it could have gone up by now. And there's something with Instagram ad as well. So if you want to do an Instagram ad, you can also use the step-by-step guide that we have here as well. If you've never used Canva and you want to create like a flyer or something like that, there's a video here that gives you a quick walkthrough of how to create your own digital content for free. And so, if you haven't used Canva before, I would encourage you to also look at that. And of course, also with the Eventbrite, if you're trying to just like, do registrations and collect like information on who's attending your event, or RSVPs as well, like, also access that as well. So that's here for you to use. So don't be afraid to kind of tap into this resource. I think we'll go to the next slide, Yasna. So last but not least, as I told you, like, obviously a lot of the youth who apply from AYEDI were really good to reporting back. Like, I think we had 100% report back rate, which is amazing, because you're always looking at that when it comes to partners, like how good are they in terms of like supporting the youth to report back. And so, encourage all of you as well to, report back to us when you're done with your project. And it's actually a very simple template that we have. It shouldn't take you more than half an hour. It's very quick, very simple. We don't ask too much. We really try to simplify all our forms and resources so that you guys don't spend like too much time on them. So like, you could choose to use a report template that's a form, or you could choose to download our app, the Rise Youth app, and then you can just kind of like upload your receipts on the go, and just kind of also upload like your impact as well through the app, and it takes like 15 minutes, so it's really quick. But so we have different options, so you can choose to use either one of those. Does anybody have any questions before I get into the project examples? All right, sounds great. So we'll just move on to project examples. I'm sure also like the team has also shown you a lot of examples as well. So these are just like additional examples that you guys can kind of look at as well. Obviously things are opening up now. Hopefully it will stay opened up, sure. There's obviously like other variants coming in. So hopefully we do stay opened up, but hopefully there won't be another lockdown in the fall. But you know, some of these projects were done like last year in 2020. So obviously there was a lockdown most of the year. So some of the things that people were able to do were like care packages, for instance. So like in this photo, like Nicole, you know, worked with another student, and they were able to just like, you know, buy food for different students on campus who are kind of facing food insecurity. And actually most of them were international students from what I recall. And so, you know, if it's something that you want to do, you know, you're more than welcome to do that as well. You're more than welcome to also duplicate a project that you find interesting. But I also really encourage you to think about something that you really want to make an impact on, that you really feel passionate about as well. And kind of like put your touch on it as well. Like, it doesn't have to be exactly like somebody else's. And so I would encourage you to also be creative and to really tap into your own passions and interests. Because I would like, when I'm doing this, I'm always thinking about like, you know, what's like, if you, for example, have like something that you really want to make an impact for in the world, like if you only have $1,500, what could you do with that kind of, those kind of funds, and how small can you start to make that bigger impact that you're trying to get to, even if it's 20 years down the road, right? So for example, if you're passionate about, you know, ending world hunger, for instance, or you're passionate about, you know, supporting people who are in humanitarian conditions, like, you know, you can start small. You can start small with doing a project like this, and you can really take you far, right? So that's how I also look at it as well. So if you go to the next slide. So Samai here did this project during Ramadan last year, I believe. And so what he did is just put together like a game on Kahoot. I'm not sure if you know, you guys have heard of Kahoot, but it's really fun to play on. You can just like engage other youth in workshops using that specific you know, application. And so he put together like, you know, different games on Kahoot, and had like different people joining into those games from across the country. And they had like, you know, several games virtually on Zoom, and also, you know, on Kahoot as well. And yeah, and then, you know, he gave out like, you know, awards to the first 3 top players. So, you know, that's an idea again that you could implement. And the best thing about this project that, you know, I liked personally was that it was really engaging. It's really nice to see when people come together for a fun night together. Like they just kind of like having, you know, they come together to just have a good time. But at the same time, you also address the issue of social, you know, the issue of people being in isolation during the pandemic, because it kind of built that virtual community, because these people are all based in different parts of the country, but they all got to meet one another on this, you know, Zoom call. And that was a community that was being built on there. So again, that's an idea. With the next one. So this is the community care package example as well. Obviously we saw a lot of these last year because of the pandemic. And so this is Alexander, based in Saskatchewan, and she's Indigenous. And so she collaborated with 5 local youth volunteers and a traditional medicine expert to develop medical care packages. And so the idea was really to provide this to their elders and their families, and kind of reintroduce some of their own ways of healing back into their own communities. You know, so, you know, if you want to do something that's also based on your background or your cultural traditions, you know, you're someone that welcome to do that. And noticed last year, actually, one of the projects from AYEDI was somebody was trying to revive like a traditional way of like embroidery, if I'm not mistaken. I thought that was a really cool project that I saw. Yeah. So this one, I said that. If you go to the next slide. I'm not sure who he was. If you're on the call, you can just say who you are, but I thought that was a really cool project. And then here we have Paige, who worked with other youth, and they created a virtual escape room, and they kind of met together like, you know, on a bi-weekly basis after school, and just like, you know, engage in these like virtual escape rooms together. And the idea was like, this was a platform that they created to kind of discuss issues that affect them as youth, but to also engage and to you know, address isolation as young people. So again, you can do something virtually, you can do something in person, and other things are opening up. You know, you're obviously welcome to kind of implement way more ideas than this, right? So move to the next slide, which I believe is the last one. Yeah, so again, another example that's you know, based on a virtual idea was, so Stephanie in Newfoundland used resources to kind of create a guided painting class, and so she ended up buying supplies for 4 different paint night attendees, dropping off the supplies at their doors and snacks as well. And they all met up on Zoom and just like, you know, did these paintings together and just discussed like how that has kind of addressed like, you know, feelings of withdrawal and kind of trying to encourage like connections as well with one another and feeling a sense of community. And so like this kind of like reminds me of like, you know, you don't have to impact like 100 people in your community, you know, you could only impact 5 people and still have made a difference. So you don't have to think about your project in that way that you have to necessarily like engage, you know, 100 people to really, you know, drive that point home. You can choose to even engage 5 people in your community, or you can choose to buy food for 5 families that are facing food insecurity, and that's still enough. That's still okay. That's your small impact, but that's still, if it means something to you, that's what's important, right? Yeah, and I think the next slide is just the last slide. Or I think I'm done, right? That was the last slide. Yeah, so thank you guys. Do you guys have any questions or anything else you'd like to ask before I head out?
Thank you so much for that,
Well,
Christina.
great to see you all.
Go ahead, sorry, go ahead.
No problem. It's great to see you. I'm just saying it's great to see you all here on a Saturday afternoon. So I hope you, since you're all here, you know, 22 people on the call, I hope you're all gonna apply and you're gonna do, you know, amazing projects this year. Thank you for inviting me, AYEDI, to speak.
Thank you so much for being here, Christina. And I just want to point out that Christina's here on her vacation, so that's dedication. And I've seen firsthand, like even last year, she's super involved with us and definitely wants our community to be uplifted and be involved. So we definitely appreciate you being our partner and being here with us today. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to raise hand, type in the chat. We can move on and take a little break.
Thank you so much, Christina. That was very helpful and so valuable for everyone here.
Perfect.
Christina knows a lot, you guys. If you have any questions about eligibility or anything, of course, AYEDI is here to help as well. But Christina's like, you know, the one who helps run it all. So I encourage you to ask her if you have any questions. Otherwise, we can always relay any questions to her later on if we need to.
Via email. The great thing is she will be here, just like Yasna and I, she'll be here every step of the way as well. So troubleshooting, anything like that, Christina is our person. Perfect.
Okay, no problem.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much. So I'm just gonna head out if there are no questions.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me, and I know it's gonna go great. You said it well, so I'm sure it's gonna go great. And you guys have a really good Saturday afternoon.
Thank you. You as well. Thank you so much, Christina.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye. Perfect. Okay, well, we hope that you guys found that valuable. We're just going to finish up a few more slides, then we will give you all a well-deserved break. So we're going to get our slides reshared now. And these next slides are actually going to be focused more so on kind of the big picture, right? So when we talk about mandate, operations, and resources, we want to think about a few different things. One, what do we want things to look like once the project is actually finished, right? Is it a change in the world or our community, in our way of being? And so when we think about this, it's helpful to think about whether you're kind of working upstream or downstream, whether you're looking at the root causes or the end goals. Think of it as creating a community garden versus handing out food boxes to people in the community who need it, right? So this also heavily ties into sustainability, which we will also be focusing in a lot during this workshop, during this summit. It can also be really helpful to decide for your mission whether you're looking at a systemic plan or at your end goals. Are you aiming for harm reduction or for total change? And then finally, it also comes down to why you're applying for the grant. We often say or think sometimes, especially when working in projects, how much can I do for how little, right? But for smaller projects, Rising Youth is really all about looking at it from a different perspective. They want projects to come from a look of abundance versus scarcity. So that's why we really encourage you with that $1,500 budget. We want you to imagine what things would look like and how you can continue scaling things up and just how you can make your project excel. The grant is also a really powerful tool when it comes to making things happen that you need to make happen. For example, hiring people to do certain training events or certain workshops, right? You can pay people to help you do what you need to do in order to amplify your project. And it really just all comes down to the next slide, sorry. That's kind of what it all comes down to, right? Your project outcomes and your grant mandate outcomes all come together to form your impact. And next slide, please. And the goal at the end of this is that Rising Youth will touch almost any project as long as it is community benefiting, it is youth-led, and it is in some way a unique volunteer-driven impact or initiative, right? So the real hook is that your project is community benefiting. What exactly is the impact? What positive changes are you making? And how are you benefiting the Afghan community and filling that gap? So we will be sending out lots of amazing resources, one of which Khaliq already kindly sent in the chat, Rising Youth Take Action Guide. A lot of resources will be sent to you following our summit, but that is kind of a big overview of the Rising Youth application, and we hope that this cleared up your understanding of everything that is required. And of course, once again, Banin and I are always here. We have your backs. So with that being said, I will open the floor to any questions that we have. And if there are no questions, we will take a quick 2-minute break prior to beginning our next workshop.
Why don't we take the break now, just because there's 2 minutes left, and then we can come back?
Sounds good. Yeah. Everyone feel free to take a 2-minute break, and then at 1:15, we will start back up again.